بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا. من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له، وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له، وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. أما بعد، فإن أحسن الكلام كلام الله، وخير الهدى هدى محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم، وإن شر الأمور محدثاتها، وكل محدثة بدعة، وكل بدعة ضلالة، وكل ضلالة في النار. So this is lesson number 10, the 10th lesson on the explanation of Al-Uboodiyyah, the book Al-Uboodiyyah by Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah, with the commentary of Sheikh Salih Al-Fawzan. So in the previous lesson, lesson number 9, we were continuing the discussion relating to Al-Qadr, the decree of Allah Azza wa Jal, and when it can be used as an argument and when it can't be used as an argument. And the previous lesson, we discussed the hadith in which Adam alayhi salam had a discussion or a debate with Musa alayhi salam, who raised the issue about being expelled from paradise. So we discussed that, and on the basis of that hadith, the clarification was made by Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah that the point that was raised by Musa alayhi salam was not to say to Adam alayhi salam, why did you sin? That was not the question that was being raised in that hadith. Rather, he was raising the issue of the calamity in that Adam alayhi salam was the one who was the recipient of that calamity, which is expulsion from paradise. And that's what the point of issue was. And so Adam alayhi salam, he argued by way of al-qadr, in the sense that that calamity was decreed upon him, and hence there is no, there's no blame as it relates to the calamities. So once that distinction was made about that hadith, because that hadith is used in order to create this misconception, once that was clarified, then Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah, he went on to bring some additional arguments, a series of additional arguments, all of which explain the futility of using al-qadr, Allah's decree, as an argument to justify one's sin and disobedience, or even one's disbelief and polytheism. And so those arguments, we can quickly summarize them, what they were. First of all, we find that if al-qadr had been a valid argument to justify one's sin and disobedience and disbelief and polytheism, then in that case, Fir'aun and Iblis and the people of Ad and Thamud and all of the destroyed nations before they were destroyed, and likewise, in the hereafter, if it was a valid excuse, then they would be excused. So why were they then destroyed and punished? If this argument by way of al-qadr was legitimate and was valid. However, this is false, because Allah Azza wa Jal declared them to be disbelievers and tyrants like Fir'aun, and he warned them and then he eventually punished them. So this is one line of argument to remove that misconception. The second line of argument is that in the Quran we have been commanded to have sabr on the one hand and to make istighfar on the other. So sabr on the one hand, and we mentioned numerous verses in relation to that. Sabr is in relation to calamities and hardships, because these are outside of our control. We can't control them. so we must have patience over them. And as for istighfar, which is seeking forgiveness, then that is in relation to the things that we do control, which is our statements and our actions and the deeds that we do, on account of which we fall into sin and disobedience, for which we are blameworthy. So therefore, the fact that Allah Azza wa Jal has commanded us to make istighfar and to make tawbah, this is a clear evidence that a person cannot use al-qadr as an argument to justify his sins and disobedience. The third line of argument is that Allah Azza wa Jal has also commanded us in the Quran to enjoin the good and to prohibit the evil. So when we see evil, when we see sins and disobedience, it is not allowed for us to be content with it. Rather, we must do that which is within our capacity to change that evil. So this includes enjoining the good and prohibiting the evil. Now, if the argument by way of al-qadr was valid, because it is said that, Allah Azza wa Jal is the one who decreed these affairs, so He must be pleased with them, then why would He order us to prohibit the evil and to enjoin the good? Right? So this is a third line of argument. The fourth line of argument is the fact that Allah Azza wa Jal has enjoined jihad, making jihad in His path. And as we explained in the previous lesson, jihad was legislated in order to protect the instrument of peaceful preaching. The foundation is to preach and to invite people to the truth by way of wisdom and good argumentation and admonishment and arguing in ways which are best. However, if there are obstacles and hindrances and barriers wherein people resort to threats and violence and things of that nature in order to hinder this message, then jihad has been legislated in order to remove these obstacles and these hindrances. And so if the argument by way of al-qadr was true and valid, then why would Allah Azza wa Jal order with this jihad? This cannot be reconciled with that argument. It shows that argument is false, that Allah Azza wa Jal is not pleased with those who are upon disbelief and not pleased with those who are upon sin and disobedience. So that was the fourth line of argument. And the fifth line of argument was the fact that Allah Azza wa Jal, that He has made one of the foundations of the religion to be al-hubbu wal-bughdu fillah, which is love and hate for the sake of Allah, or put in another way, al-wala wal-bara, which is to have loyalty to the truth and its people, and to have disloyalty to the people who oppose the truth. And so this is where we basically finished in the previous lesson on this fifth line of argument, which is the issue of loyalty to Allah and His Messenger and to the people of the truth, and disloyalty to those who oppose that. So we are going to speak about this, inshallah ta'ala. We're going to continue today. What Ibn Taymiyyah does next is to mention many evidences from the Quran which are a proof for this fifth line of argument. Right? In other words, there are many verses in the Quran which speak of the difference between truth and falsehood, and loyalty to the people of truth and disloyalty to the people of falsehood. He makes that distinction very clearly in the Quran. And so Ibn Taymiyyah brings a series of verses in order to establish the concrete evidence for all of this. So we're going to go through these verses inshallah ta'ala today, just in order to emphasize this fifth line of evidence to do with loyalty and disloyalty, and how this is a proof against this misconception that al-qadr is somehow an argument to justify sin and disobedience and kufr, false religion, polytheism, shirk, right? It is not a valid argument. So from the verses that Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah he brings, يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا لَا تَتَّخِذُوا عَدُوِّي وَعَدُوَّكُمْ أَوْلِيَاءَ تُلْقُونَ إِلَيْهِمْ بِالْمَوَدَّةِ. So this verse, O you who believe, يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا, O you who believe, لَا تَتَّخِذُوا عَدُوِّي, do not take my enemies, وَعَدُوَّكُمْ, and your enemies, أَوْلِيَاءَ, as friends and protectors, تُلْقُونَ إِلَيْهِمْ بِالْمَوَدَّةِ, giving them or showing them affection. And then the verse continues up until the end of that verse, and it continues and it mentions about Ibrahim alayhi salam. قَدْ كَانَتْ لَكُمْ أُسْوَةٌ حَسَنَةٌ فِي إِبْرَاهِيمَ وَالَّذِينَ مَعَهُ إِذْ قَالُوا لِقَوْمِهِمْ إِنَّا بُرَآءُ مِنْكُمْ وَمِمَّا تَعْبُدُونَ مِنْ دُونِ اللَّهِ كَفَرْنَا بِكُمْ وَبَدَا بَيْنَنَا وَبَيْنَكُمُ الْعَدَاوَةُ وَالْبَغْضَاءُ أَبَدًا حَتَّى تُؤْمِنُوا بِاللَّهِ وَحْدَهُ. So this is in Surah Al-Mumtahinah. This is the I believe the 59th chapter. And in these verses, Allah Azza wa Jal, He says, O you who believe, do not take my enemy and your enemy as friends and protectors, showing affection to them. And it continues, indeed there is for you in Ibrahim and in those with him a good conduct, a good example, when they said to their people, indeed we are free and innocent of you and of that which you worship besides Allah. We have disbelieved in you, and enmity has arisen between us, enmity and hatred. It has arisen and will remain until you believe in Allah alone. Now Shaykh Salih al-Fawzan comments upon this passage, and he says that this verse, from the beginning to its end, is all about the issue of loyalty and disloyalty, al-wala wal-bara. And there are to be found certain people who want to abolish this principle. They want to completely erase it. They want to erase it from the Quran. And they want to remove all of the differences and the differentiations which exist between the people of Iman and the people of disbelief, the people of Kufr. However, Allah Azza wa Jal refuses except to perfect His light, even if the polytheists dislike it. And the Quran, when we look in the Quran, we see the Quran is always exposing them day and night. They are not able to change anything from the Quran, not even a single word, because Allah Azza wa Jal has preserved the Quran, because they wish to alter these teachings from the Quran, but they can't do so because the Quran is preserved, it is memorized, its verses are preserved in their meanings as well. But they will never be able to do this, because the Quran is always exposing what they are upon and their evil, and it warns against them. So in this particular verse, in these verses that we just looked at, O you who believe, this is a call to the believers. لا تتخذوا عدوي وعدوكم, do not take my enemies and your enemy as friends and protectors, awliya, showing affection to them. Meaning that you do not show such loyalty to them by showing such love and aid and support and praise and so on and so forth, from these types of what we call al-mujamala, which is like a type of flattery and praise and things of that nature. So do not show affection to them. وَقَدْ كَفَرُوا بِمَا جَاءَكُم مِّنَ الْحَقِّ, whilst they have disbelieved in that which you have brought, what has come to you, which has come to you of the truth, meaning through the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. يُخْرِجُونَ الرَّسُولَ وَإِيَّاكُمْ, while they expel you, while they expel the messenger and you, meaning they expel you from the city of Mecca and they expel you from your land. Why? Because أَن تُؤْمِنُوا بِاللَّهِ رَبِّكُمْ, because you believed in your Lord, in Allah your Lord. So this was the only reason. They believed in Allah, they singled Him out in worship, they rejected all the other false deities, and so for that reason enmity was shown to them and they were expelled from their homes and their land. And then the verse continues, where it warns the Muslims not to confide in them and show love to them and things of that nature. And then it moves into the next part of in the chapter about Ibrahim alayhi salam, in the verse that we mentioned, when Ibrahim alayhi salam and those with him, they said to the people, we are free and innocent of you and that which you worship besides Allah, and we disbelieve in you, and enmity and hatred has appeared between us and will remain up until you believe in Allah alone. So here in Ibrahim alayhi salam is an example, and an example to be followed in this issue of being loyal to the truth and its people and freeing oneself from that which opposes the truth. And this is a mighty foundation of the religion. Now, this principle has been misunderstood by some misguided extremist Muslims, and they are those who ascribe to Islam from amongst them, and they are the Khawarij. These are extremists, and what they have done is to take this principle which relates to those who are upon disbelief and shirk, meaning that they are disbelievers to begin with in principle, and what they have done is to apply these types of verses to the Muslim rulers, and they do so on account of actions of the rulers which are perfectly permissible in Islam. So for example, when the rulers engage in trade relations with non-Muslim nations, which is perfectly permissible, when they enter into treaties with non-Muslim nations, which again is perfectly permissible, when they give gifts, for example, giving gifts to non-Muslim leaders for whatever reason, diplomatic reasons or strategic reasons or whatever it might be, all of this is now in the realm of politics between states, between nations. All of this is perfectly permissible. All these various types of things are Islamically permissible, even for a ruler, Muslim ruler, to cooperate with non-Muslim states in dealing with issues of crime which are cross-border. For example, drugs, for example, and organized crime, things of that nature. All of this is Islamically permissible. So these extremists, what they do is they take these verses that speak about Ibrahim alayhi salam and the issue of freeing oneself and making oneself innocent from disbelief and its people, and then they apply it to the Muslim rulers on account of things that they, from their ignorance, consider to be disbelief, when these things are not from disbelief. It is not disbelief to have a treaty with a non-Muslim ruler. It is not from disbelief to have trade relations with a non-Muslim ruler, and the various other things that were mentioned. So we have to keep in mind that as we are speaking about this issue of loyalty and disloyalty, we speak about this subject on the basis of sound principles and sound knowledge, and we do not enter into extremism on the one hand, like these Khawarij, who basically say that having trade relations with non-Muslims and having treaties with them, all of this is unlawful, and all of this is loyalty which is prohibited against. This is from their ignorance. This does not mean loyalty in the religious sense. These are actions and deeds which are perfectly permissible. So this is from their ignorance. And then after this, The next verse, which is quoted by Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah, is the statement of Allah Azza wa Jal, لا تجد قوما يؤمنون بالله واليوم الآخر يوادون من حاد الله ورسوله, all the way to the end of the end of the verse, أولئك كتب في قلوبهم الإيمان وأيدهم بروح منه. You will not find the people who believe in Allah and the last day showing affection or loving those who oppose Allah and His Messenger. And the verse continues up until the end of the verse. They are the ones in whose hearts Allah has written Iman and has supported them with a spirit from Himself. Shaykh al-Fawzan comments upon this, and he basically says that Iman, when you have Iman in the heart, it is something that opposes the showing of affection and love and loyalty to those who reject Iman. So the person in whose heart there is Iman, it is not possible for him to show this type of loyalty and affection and to love the people of disbelief. Why? Because Allah Azza wa Jal is displeased with them. Allah dislikes what they are upon. And so the believers' love and likes and hatred and dislikes, all of that follows on from that which Allah loves and that which He is displeased with. So whomever Allah loves, then the believer loves, and whoever Allah is displeased with and hates, then likewise the believer follows through with that. And so the one who disbelieves in Allah and the Messenger, even if he was the nearest of people to him, such as, وَإِن كَانُوا آبَاءُهُمْ أو أبناءهم أو إخوانهم أو عشيرتهم, and so on and so forth, whether it be even their fathers, their brothers, and their offspring, their children and their relatives, then this type of love and loyalty is prohibited. Now we have to make clear here what specifically we are speaking about, because again, we cannot fall into either extremism nor can we fall into negligence. When the scholars speak about this topic, about loyalty and disloyalty and love and hate, and what specifically is it that we are speaking of? What we are speaking of here, as the scholars explain, is that we cannot show love and loyalty to the people of disbelief that is on the basis of religion. Right? So we cannot show love and loyalty on the basis of religion, meaning that we love them for their religion. Right? And the proof for this is that a Muslim man can marry a non-Muslim woman, like a Christian woman or a Jewish woman, and likewise a child may have non-Muslim parents, or Muslim parents may have a non-Muslim child, and we find that between them is the natural type of love that Allah Azza wa Jal has put between blood relatives, right? So, a child loves its parents, the parents loves its children, a brother loves his brother or his sister, and vice versa, and so on and so forth. But they could be separated by way of Iman. Now, what is prohibited is to love someone on the basis of religion and to show loyalty to them on the basis of religion when it is, obviously not upon Islam. So, for example, you cannot love someone because he is on the basis of his Christianity. But if he's your brother, or if she is your mother, or if it is your child, or if it is, whatever, there's a blood relation, you can love them because of that blood relation. Right? There's nothing wrong with this. This is natural. And so we must make a distinction in these issues, that what is being prohibited, and likewise when it comes to loyalty and aiding and supporting, then it cannot be on the basis of religion, right? So that loyalty and that love is absent. But as for that which is tabi'i, that which Allah has put of natural affinity and love and things like that, then this is permissible. So from this verse, in this next verse that we just mentioned, this is the commentary upon that. And then the next verse that Ibn Taymiyyah mentions, أَفَنَجْعَلُ الْمُسْلِمِينَ كَالْمُجْرِمِينَ. Shall we make those who are Muslims like those who are criminals? This is Surah Al-Qalam, the 68th chapter, verse number 35. So again, this is a rejection from Allah Azza wa Jal that Muslims should be made like the criminals. And so we must make a distinction between these two categories, because Allah Azza wa Jal has made that distinction. And it is not from the wisdom of Allah, nor from the justice of Allah Azza wa Jal, that He should equate between all these various different categories. Now at this point we want to stop and ask, what is the point behind all of these verses? These verses are evidence for the fifth point that we mentioned, which is that in the Quran, Allah Azza wa Jal has made a distinction between the people of Iman and the people of Kufr, and the people who are the people of truth and righteousness and the people who are criminals. He did not equate between them. And so therefore this is a clear proof that we must show loyalty to the truth and its people, and disloyalty to those who oppose the truth. And this is therefore also a proof that you cannot use al-qadar as an argument. You can't use the argument that, well, Allah made me a disbeliever, or Allah made me to sin, or Allah had decreed for me to sin, Allah had decreed for me to, drink alcohol and do this and do that and abandon my obligations and so on and so forth. You can't use al-qadar as an argument, because Allah Azza wa Jal has made a distinction between all these various parties, between the sinners and between the obedient, between the righteous and the rectifiers, and between the criminals. And so these verses that we are mentioning, which Ibn Taymiyyah has brought together here, all of them are a clear evidence for this. Likewise, another very clear verse in Surah Sa'd, Surah 38, verse number 28, أَمْ نَجْعَلُ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ كَالْمُفْسِدِينَ فِي الْأَرْضِ أَمْ نَجْعَلُ الْمُتَّقِينَ كَالْفُجَّارِ. Shall we make those who believe and do righteous deeds to be like those who cause corruption upon the earth? Or shall we make the pious to be like the sinful? Again, this is very clear. How can you argue by way of al-qadar and say that Allah must be pleased with my deeds because He decreed them upon me? So my sin, my disobedience, or whatever it might be, why did Allah decree it upon me if He's not pleased with it? This argument is false, because Allah Azza wa Jal is telling you here that He makes a distinction between the believers, the pious believers, the pious ones, and the sinners, and between those who believe and do righteous deeds and those who commit corruption upon the earth. So this cannot be correct. So this again is Allah Azza wa Jal showing rejection, and this is a clear invalidation of that shubha, of that misconception in which the issue of al-qada wal-qadar is used. Similarly, another very clear verse is the statement of Allah Azza wa Jal in Surah Al-Jathiyah, Surah number 45, verse number 21. In this verse, Allah Azza wa Jal, He says, أَمْ حَسِبَ الَّذِينَ اجْتَرَحُوا السَّيِّئَاتِ أَنْ نَجْعَلَهُمْ كَالَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ سَوَاءٌ مَحْيَاهُمْ وَمَمَاتُهُمْ سَاءَ مَا تَحْكُمُونَ. Shall we make those who commit evil deeds? Do you think that those who commit evil deeds, that we will make them like those who do righteous deeds, that their life and their death shall be one and the same? How evil it is that you judge. So once again, this is again a rejection from Allah Azza wa Jal against those people who think that those who believe and do righteousness and those who do evil, that they will be treated equally, that they are the same in the sight of Allah Azza wa Jal. This does not befit the wisdom of Allah Azza wa Jal. Likewise, we see in Surah Fatir, the 35th chapter, chapter 35, verses 19 to 22, in which Allah Azza wa Jal, He says, وَمَا يَسْتَوِي الْأَعْمَى وَالْبَصِيرُ وَلَا الظُّلُمَاتُ وَلَا النُّورُ وَلَا الظِّلُّ وَلَا الْحَرُورُ وَمَا يَسْتَوِي الْأَحْيَاءُ وَلَا الْأَمْوَاتُ. Here Allah Azza wa Jal makes a distinction between four categories. The blind and the seeing are not alike, are not equal, nor the darknesses and the light, nor the cool shade, or that which is the heat, and nor are the living and the dead equal. So here Allah Azza wa Jal made a distinction between things which are opposed to each other. These are opposites to each other, and they are not alike. So, things which are opposites like kufr and iman, belief and disbelief, obedience and disobedience, and all the various other categories, they cannot be alike. And so here Allah Azza wa Jal mentions these four things. The blind and the seeing are not alike, the darknesses and the light are not alike, and so on and so forth. Life and death is not alike, the living and the dead are not alike. All of this is to show that it is not from the wisdom of Allah Azza wa Jal to treat these categories, the believer, the disbeliever, the pious, the sinful, the obedient, the disobedient, to make them all the same. And so all of this again is another clear evidence that a person cannot use the argument of al-qadar to justify his sinful, disobedient, deeds. Likewise, the example which Allah Azza wa Jal gives, as occurs in Surah Al-Zumar, Surah 39, verse number 29, ضرب الله مثلا رجلا فيه شركاء متشاكسون ورجلا سلما لرجل هل يستويان مثلا الحمد لله بل أكثرهم لا يعلمون. Allah sets forth an example of a man who is who is basically in captivity or enslaved to many different partners who share in him, who share over him, and a man who submits only to one other man. Are these two equal? Are they equal? All praise is due to Allah, but most of them do not know. So here, this is now a parable between the muwahhid, the one who is enslaved to one master, and the one who is enslaved to many masters. They cannot be equal, because the one who is enslaved to many masters, he will be running between them, trying to please them, trying to fulfill their needs, and so on and so forth, and he will become exhausted, and he will become, confused and bewildered, as opposed to the man who submits and only has one master. So this is really a parable of Tawheed and Shirk, and how they cannot be equal. And this is the same thing that was mentioned by Yusuf alayhi salam when he was in the prison, when he was giving da'wah to those prisoners in the prison, and he said to them, Ya sahib sijn, O two companions of the prison, أَأَرْبَابٌ مُتَفَرِّقُونَ خَيْرٌ أَمِ اللَّهُ الْوَاحِدُ الْقَهَّارُ. Are multiple lords, many divergent lords, are they better? Or Allah, the one, al-wahidul qahhar, the one who is compelling, the compeller. So here the same argument, that the one who believes in and worships multiple lords, he cannot be like the one who worships only one Lord and submits to only one Lord. And then Ibn Taymiyyah mentions some similar verses, and all of this, the point behind all of these verses that Ibn Taymiyyah has mentioned is simply to say that these are very explicit evidences in the Quran to show that Allah Azza wa Jal does not treat the people of Iman and righteous action and rectification and obedience to be the same as the people of disbelief and polytheism and corruption and sinfulness. And so therefore it can never ever be justified by way of al-qadr. You can never ever justify by way of al-qadr. You can't justify your sin. You can't use it as an excuse for your sin or for your disbelief or for your polytheism, because all of this is very, very clear and explicit in the Quran that Allah Azza wa Jal is displeased with it. And also the fact that He sent you messengers and books to guide you to that which He loves and is displeased, to guide to that which He loves and is pleased with on the one hand, and to that which He hates and is displeased with on the other hand. So after mentioning all of these verses to make this point very, very clear, Ibn Taymiyyah then, rahimahullah, he says that there are many, many other examples of this in the Quran in which Allah Azza wa Jal مما يفرق الله فيه بين أهل الحق والباطل, in which Allah distinguishes and separates between the people of the truth and the people of falsehood. وأهل الطاعة وأهل المعصية, and the people of obedience and the people of disobedience. وأهل البر وأهل الفجور, and the people of righteousness and the people of sinfulness. وأهل الهدى والضلال, and the people of guidance and those of misguidance. وأهل الغي والرشاد, and the people again of people who swerve away from the truth and the people who are upon right guidance. وأهل الصدق والكذب, and likewise the people of truthfulness and the people who tell lies. So these types of verses, Ibn Taymiyyah says, are very, very many in the Quran. So what is the end result of all of this discussion? Where are we leading to now after we have mentioned all of these clear arguments in the Quran? The fact that had this argument with al-qadr, using al-qadr to justify your sin or your disbelief, had it been valid, then Fir'aun and Iblis and all the various nations that were destroyed, they would not be blamed. But they are clearly blamed in the Quran. Likewise, Allah would not order you to seek forgiveness for your sin. Likewise, He would not have commanded you to enjoin the good and prohibit the evil, which He clearly did. Likewise, he would not have ordered you to strive against the people of, who oppose the truth, the people of disbelief. Nor would He have ordered you and made it a principle in His religion to love and hate for His sake, and to show loyalty to Him and to His messengers and to the believers. Right? So the end result of all of these verses and all of those arguments that we used to reject and to refute this misconception and this false claim, then the end result is to show that a person who accepts the creational reality, if you remember, al-haqiqa al-kawniyya is something that Ibn Taymiyyah spoke about. The creational reality is basically where you acknowledge that Allah is the Lord, that everything is created, that everything is is made subservient to you and of benefit to you. So you acknowledge all of this. The person who observes and accepts this reality, but he does not accept the religious reality, right? The religious reality, which is that we are thereby obligated to worship Allah alone, right? The one who does not make, the one who does not combine these two together, you have to bring both of them together. Whoever does not do that, then he will make all of these distinctions which Allah made in the Quran, He will treat them all to be the same. Right? He will make them all to be the same. He will make the people of Iman to be no different to the people of Kufr. He will make the people of sin and disobedience no different to the people of righteousness and obedience. He will make the people of rectification to be like the people of corruption. Right? He will equate between all of these. Why? Because He is not bringing the religious reality, al-haqiqa, ad-diniyya, which now becomes the criterion. It becomes the separating point between all the parties of the earth, all of the factions of the earth. This is what is the criterion. Al-haqiqa ad-diniyya, the religious reality that we are obligated to enact, to act upon, to actualize, to make it true and real in our speech, in our hearts, in our actions, in our worship, in everything, right? In our feelings, in our loyalty, right? So the one who does not establish this religious reality, then everything will be equal to him. Everybody will be the same as everybody else. And this is an extremely important point to understand, especially in the current times, the present times, where we see that there are people of disbelief, evil people upon evil ideologies who intend corruption, and what they are doing is that they are removing all of these barriers one by one. These barriers and these distinctions which Allah Azza wa Jal has mentioned in the Quran, and which the messengers came with, until even not only in just the religious reality, but even in the creational reality even. For example, the distinction between a man and a woman, the distinction between a male and a female, right? This is from the creational reality, right? And so they want to overturn the realities and change the scales and make everything backward, and to remove all of the distinctions which exist. And so, this shows that the issue goes even beyond, in our time, goes even beyond just the issue of the religious reality, right? All of those distinctions that must be made in relation to the religious reality, meaning, like we said, al-iman wal-kufr, tawheed and shirk, right? Salah, rectification, and fasad, corruption, and obedience, which is ta'ah, and disobedience, ma'asiyah, and all the various other things, righteousness and sinfulness, al-bir and fujur. These are all distinctions which exist in the religion. And so leaving that to one side, all of which is from the religious reality, even in the creational reality we see that the people of disbelief want to confuse the people of the earth, and they want to mislead them and to make them reject what they know and what their eyes can see, until they turn things the other way around. And so one of the clear examples of this is to remove completely the distinction between a man and a woman, and what is masculinity and what is femininity, to erode all of these distinctions. And likewise, all the various other things which include the rights that we have, religiously speaking. For example, the right to own our own wealth and our property and our belongings, right? So they come along and say, no, nobody has the right to own any property, right? The property belongs only to the state or to whoever it might be, right? Whereas Allah Azza wa Jal has allowed every man to be the master of his property, the owner of his property. And these are one of the rights. These are one of the rights that Allah Azza wa Jal has given to everybody. So they want to abolish this as well. So abolish masculinity and femininity, which distinguishes between a man and a woman. Abolish the issue of wealth, because Allah Azza wa Jal had made these distinctions from His wisdom. He made some people to be poor, He made some people to be rich, He made some people to have plenty of possessions, He made other people to have little possessions. Why? Because then this enables the issue of livelihood, right? If we did not have these disparities and these distinctions between the rich and the poor and the needy and the not so needy and whatever, right? Then this is what provides the basis for people earning a living and trading and pursuing and seeking these things, and from which livelihood comes, right? But they want to abolish all of this and say no, everybody has to be equal. This basically is like communism and socialism. So they want to destroy that part of it as well. And then we can go on and on and on and give many examples to show how these people of corruption are, let alone the issue of the religious reality, where they basically say that every religion is the same, right? They are all different paths to the same end goal. Doesn't matter whether you are a Muslim or a Jew or a Christian or a Hindu or a Buddhist. You are all just have got different interpretations of the truth, right? So they want to equate between everything. All religion is one and the same. So all of those distinctions now disappear. Tawheed and shirk, kufr and iman, and at-ta'ah, obedience, disobedience, sinfulness, righteous, all those completely disappear now. So not only in the religious sense, but also we see that in the creational reality, in terms of Allah's creation, things are being turned the other way around, right? The creation has an originator. And then they abolish that and say, well, no, it doesn't have an originator, right? Mankind has an originator, and they say, no, it doesn't have an originator. Reversing everything, turning everything around, and removing those distinctions which Allah Azza wa Jal put in His creation. So the point being that what Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah is discussing here about how the religious reality, al-haqiqa ad-diniyya, which is what the messengers called to single out Allah in worship and all the things which follow on from that, that if a person does not bring this, then he is going to equate between everything. All of these distinctions that are made in the Quran, he is going to negate them and abolish them. And the end result is going to be that all religion is the same, everything is one and the same, and this is the extremity of falsehood and misguidance. And so this is why Ibn Taymiyyah says here, فَمَنْ شَهِدَ الْحَقِيقَةَ الْكَوْنِيَّةَ دُونَ الدِّينِيَّةِ سوى بين هذه الأجناس المختلفة التي فرق الله بينها غاية التفريق. The one who observes the creational reality as opposed to the religious reality, then he will equate between all of these various types and categories in which Allah made a distinction between them all in the most clearest of ways. And he says, in fact, some of them will even go to the degree that they will even equate between Allah and the idols, right? So they will go to such a degree in this misguidance that they will even equate between Allah and the idols, that they are one and the same. And in fact, this is what we see in the Quran when Allah Azza wa Jal mentions about the idol worshippers and what they will say on the Day of Judgment. They will say, when their misguidance becomes clear to them, Tallahi in kunna lafi dhalalim mubin idh nusawwikum bi rabbil alameen. They will say, by Allah, we were indeed in clear, manifest misguidance, wherein we equated you, meaning those things which they worshipped, the idols, wherein we equated you with the Lord of the worlds. Right? So, to such a degree that even we find that the idol worshippers, they equate between Allah and the idols that they are worshipping. And in fact, we find, Ibn Taymiyyah mentions that some people went even further than this, and they equated Allah with all of His creation collectively, because they said that Allah is the same as everything in existence, meaning nothing exists except Allah, and Allah is everything that exists. So these are the people who believe in the unity of existence, the people of Wahdatul Wujud, and this is the extremity of disbelief. So let alone, now look at this, there are three different things going on here. First of all is to deny the religious reality, which is Tawheed, and singling out Allah in worship. If you deny that, and you do not, if you don't make Islam to be founded upon that, then you will remove all of those distinctions and categorizations that Allah Azza wa Jal has made in the Quran. So now there will not be any distinction between Iman and Kufr, Tawheed and Shirk, sin and righteousness, and so on and so forth, and the people who are upon that. All of that will go. Right? This now is al-haqiqah ad-diniyya, the religious reality. Likewise, in the creational reality, right, to do with Allah's creation, we mentioned some examples of these criminals in the present time, wherein they equate between the male and the female. There's no such thing as a man and a woman, right? And they're removing these distinctions, right, in this area of men and women, and likewise in many other areas as well, to do with rights, to do with property, to do with so many other things, and even in terms of Allah's creation. Allah Azza wa Jal has told us that the sun is in motion, and the moon is in motion, and the stars are in motion, and the earth is stationary, and so they will replace all of that and say, no, everything is relative, right? So they will abolish the creational reality that Allah Azza wa Jal has told us in the Quran, and they will say, no, everything's relative. Everything is relative. We don't know what's moving, right? All right, and so they abolish the realities which Allah Azza wa Jal has told us in the Quran. So this is the way that you corrupt the fitrah of mankind. You corrupt the reason of mankind. When you corrupt what they, when you make them see something other than what they are seeing, then this is the way that you can enslave them and corrupt them and lead them to false beliefs and false ideas and false theories and about creation and origination and so on and so forth, right? So not only is it in the religious reality, al-haqiqah ad-diniyya, which is to do with Tawheed and so on and so forth, but also about Allah's creation itself. And not only that, some of them have gone even to the level whereby even the Creator Himself, Allah Azza wa Jal Himself, they will equate between Him and the idols that they worship. Or like the Christians do, and they equate Him with Isa alayhi salam. Or like the people of the unity of existence, Wahdatul Wujud, what they do, where they say everything is Allah, and there's no distinction between the worshipper and the worshipped. So they say that we are the worshippers and we are the worshipped as well, because everything in existence is Allah Azza wa Jal. And this is from the greatest of misguidance, and there were from those who ascribe to Islam who fell into this misguidance. And all of this misguidance, it starts from the rejection of the creational reality. In other words, when you basically say Islam is simply to believe that there is a creator, there is a provider, there is a sustainer, He gives life, He takes life, and He provides, and so this is the basis of Islam. That's all there is to Islam, to believe in a creator. Once you limit Islam only to that, and this is just simply affirming the creational reality, the fact that you can see that the creation is clearly created, has a creator, is subjected to our use. This is something that everybody sees. If you restrict Islam only to that, and you leave out the religious reality that the messengers came and called to, which is to single out Allah in worship, then this now becomes the starting point that will eventually lead into this type of misguidance that we find that was found amongst some of those who ascribe to Islam from the extremists among the Sufis, and who entered into philosophy and who entered into many of these ideas. This is where it can eventually lead to, after a series of steps in a step-by-step fashion. So this is why we have to understand these fundamentals very, very clearly, so that we can see the potential misguidance which can arise if we do not understand these principles very, very, very clearly and solidly. So what we'll do is, at this point, we can stop our lesson there for today, inshallah. What we've done in this lesson is simply to mention many verses in the Quran in which Allah Azza wa Jal makes various distinctions between categories of people. And the purpose behind these verses was to support the argument, the refutation of the argument by way of al-qadr, right? When people use al-qadr as an argument to justify their sin or their disbelief. So these verses established al-wala wal-bara, loyalty, disownment, and that Allah makes these distinctions. And we finished on this issue of some people have gone to such levels of misguidance that they even equate between the creator and the created, right? Until they treated all of existence to be Allah. Nothing exists except Allah. So this is the level of misguidance. So what we'll do is we'll finish on this point, and inshallah we're going to continue discussing this same point about the unity of existence, and some of the Sufis, extremist Sufis, who came with this idea and who spoke with this extreme disbelief. We'll continue with that point, inshallah ta'ala, in the next lesson. So we'll finish there. Walhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wa sallallahu ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'een.